Today, we will be taking a deeper dive into the lives of some crazy people of history, such as John Murray Spear, a 19th century American who tried to build his own messiah out of mechanical parts animated by the disembodied soul of the non-existent baby from a female follower's phantom pregnancy, based on designs transmitted to him telepathically by a secret society of famous dead people. Or Elagabalus, a Roman emperor that would make an excellent case study for why you don't give horny teenagers the power of a Roman emperor. And with that, let us jump into it. John Murray Spear was born in the city of Boston in 1804, and from a young age was a member of the Universalist Church of America, or at the time known as the Universalist General Convention. Spear and his brother would study theology under the pastor of the church, Hosea Ballou. In 1830, Spear would be ordained and become minister of the Barnstable congregation. While Spear was a minister, he would form friendships with Theodore Parker and William Lloyd Garrison, both well-known abolitionists. Spear was a kind, gentle, and thoughtful guy. He was known for petitioning for social reform, including women's rights, labor reform, and the removal of the death penalty. He was also a prominent abolitionist, much like his friends, and organized the first Universalist anti-slavery convention and helped to oversee the stretch of the Underground Railroad, which ran through Boston. But everything took a turn in the winter of 1844 when Spear was speaking out in Portland, Maine, to a mass of people who eventually raged into a mob and beat him to the brink of death, until his friend Oliver Dennett saved him and nursed him back to health. But shortly after Spear recovered, Dennett would die. After these events, Spear would not be the same. In 1852, Spear would break all ties with the Universalist Church and instead turn to spiritualism. Spiritualism is basically believing you can talk to the dead, so Spear would claim that he was in contact with the Association of Electrizers, a group of spirits including Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Quincy Adams, Benjamin Rush, and his namesake, John Murray. Spear believed that the purpose of this group was to bring new technology to people so that greater levels of personal and spiritual freedom could be achieved. He was basically the inverse Ted Kaczynski of the 1800s. Anyways, in 1853, Spear and a handful of followers would retreat to a wooden shed at the top of High Rock Hill in Lynn, Massachusetts. Here, they would get to work on creating the new motive power, a mechanical messiah which was intended to herald a new era of utopia. The new motive power was constructed of copper, zinc, and magnets, all carefully machined, as well as a dining room table. After 9 months of making this monstrosity, Spear and the new Mary, an unnamed woman, would ritualistically birth the contraption in an attempt to give it life. Of course, this didn't work, and Spear would dismantle the machine. After this, Spear would continue to preach spiritualism, and in 1872, Spear would claim that the Association of Electrizers asked him to retire from the ministry. Spear would die 5 years later in 1887 and be buried in the Mount Moriah Cemetery. The Roman or Byzantine Emperor Justinian II had a wild life, came to power at 17, was deposed in his early 20s, had his nose cut off and his tongue slit, exiled to the Crimea, escaped exile and fled to the court of the Khazar Khan, married the Khan's sister, personally strangled 2 assassins sent after him by the Byzantine Emperor, fled the Crimea by sailing across the Black Sea to Bulgaria in a fishing boat. Caught in a terrible storm, his friends in the boat told him to promise he'd forgive his enemies so God would get them through the storm. Justinian answered, "If I spare a single one of them, may God drown me now." Somehow convinced the Bulgar Khan to give him an army, marched on Constantinople, sneaked into the city through an unused aqueduct, and took back the throne. Used the emperors who deposed him as footstools while he watched the chariot races, then executed them. Blinded the ecumenical patriarch and sent him to the Pope as a warning. Did some purging so brutal that he was deposed again, and this time killed along with his family. The Roman Empire lasted for 1,500 years. Justinian II was the only emperor to retake the throne after being deposed. Let's start this one with a quote by Aelius Lampridius, Elagabalus's imperial biographer. The life of Elagabalus I should never have put into writing, hoping that nobody should know that he was emperor of Rome. Elagabalus was born sometime in 204 AD in the Syrian city of Homs, with the names Sextus Varius Avitus Bassianus. As a minor member of the Severan dynasty, he served as high priest to the sun god Elagabal. Apparently he was handsome for the time. I don't see it. But either way, it was said that he would draw crowds of Roman legionaries who would come see him bedecked in fine silk robes and effeminate jewelry. Bassianus's quiet life would take a turn when the emperor at the time, Caracalla, would be assassinated in 217 AD. Although Bassianus was the first cousin once removed from the late emperor, his ambitious grandmother, Julia Maesa, would seed a rumor that Bassianus was Caracalla's bastard son. Somehow, this rumor would work due to his resemblance to the late Caracalla, and the army would swear allegiance to the young Bassianus and march to meet the usurper Macrinus in the battle at Antioch. Macrinus would be captured and executed, and in the spring of 218 AD, Bassianus, a 14-year-old boy, would be proclaimed emperor. To catch you up to speed, a teenage priest from Syria, in only a few months, found himself propelled onto the throne of the world's largest empire and was given the Roman treasury as his personal bank account, and that shit was looking thick. To summarize Bassianus's reign as a Roman emperor, you could say that he was excessively generous, exceedingly horny, and had what can only be described as a warped sense of humor. Here are some of the great stories of Bassianus, if you can call them great. Bassianus's first act upon arriving in Rome was to construct a temple in which to install his god. His god took a form of a black conical meteorite from his home city Homs. He would place this god in the temple and force Christians, Jews, and Samaritans to worship their gods in the temple, and during religious ceremonies, the emperor would make the senators watch as he danced around the rock's altar. Now for probably the most interesting parts, Bassianus's sex life. Bassianus was said to have never slept with the same woman twice. He would particularly love charioteers, whose speed and physical prowess he particularly admired. To put this into context, charioteers were like celebrities, and the scandalous of these acts can be compared to Joe Biden sleeping with Kim Kardashian and establishing her as a consort. He would also procure men for political office based solely on the size of their penises and would make more use of them than their counsel. Take that as you will. There are also many other stories such as rose petal orgies, his dress sense, or his bizarre gift-giving lottery, but that would take up too much time. In the end, Bassianus would take things too far and make his grandmother mad enough to have him assassinated. And in June 221 AD, Bassianus would be slaughtered by his soldiers and his corpse dragged through the streets of Rome and thrown into the river Tiber. Well, that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.